We are in our third week of this series, Staying Power. It is a series about spiritual growth. And today is going to sound a bit redundant, but I think it's important to go over some of these things again. Spiritual growth empowers us to identify our purpose, to accomplish really what God has created us to do. And spiritual growth enables you to be the best version of you, the best person that you can be. It encourages you to love the people around you the way you want to love them, but often fail to do. Spiritual growth equips you to love and to care for yourself in a way that is not selfish, but really selfless. In fact, your most important objective in life could be to grow spiritually. It can actually be more important than your job or career, your relationships or your friendships, your marriage or your children. And here's why. Because it can determine your success in all of those areas of your life. And that's why we've said that all of us need to be open to and interested in spiritual growth. But being open to spiritual growth is not enough. I'm open to losing weight. And that's about all I am. But the second part is the crucial one. Anybody can be open to growth, but to actually grow, you have to make a commitment. You have to grow spiritually by the commitments that we make and that we keep. Staying power is absolutely necessary for spiritual growth because, let's face it, there are just so many obstacles in our way. Everything in the world seems more important, more urgent, more real than your spiritual life. We are a society of human doings rather than human beings. I've fallen into the trap myself where if I'm spending quiet time in prayer, I feel like I'm not doing anything and I should be doing something. And yet that quiet time with God, sometimes me doing nothing but listening, can be key to everything that I actually do. Everything gets in the way of a spiritual commitment. Everything conspires against it. And it takes time. It's the same way you can't approach anything and accomplish it well without spending the time. You can't microwave your spirituality. Michael is a life coach, and he's going to steal that line. He said, of course, I'm going to charge him. But this series is about the steps that we need to take to meet those commitments. And, we've identified 5 of the commitments that we think are essential to be a follower of Christ, to serve in ministry or missions, to tithe, and I don't mean 10%, but to give something back to the church. Engaging in a small group, practicing prayer and sacraments, and sharing your faith. And over the course of this series, we are digging deeper into each of these steps. 2 weeks ago, we looked at the step that we said was probably the easiest of all, and that is prayer and the celebration of the sacraments. And we were reminded prayer is a conversation, two-way, and it is an encounter with God that takes place. And that takes practice. The more we pray, the more likely we are to see the fruits and the success of that. Prayer can change our world because it changes us. It changes the way that we act as we receive God's wisdom and insight and direction. Last week we looked at what we said is perhaps the most challenging step, and that's sharing our faith with people who do not have a relationship with Christ or with his church. Sharing our faith helps us to grow because it is a way in which we express our love for God and for others. And while sharing our faith can seem somewhat intimidating, it really doesn't have to be. We spoke of identifying somebody that perhaps is far from God that you know and invest in them through prayer and build a relationship. And eventually maybe invite them to come to church at the appropriate time. Because, when we spend time with people, like it or not, we tend to become more like them. It's true. The people in our lives tend to pull us in their direction, and they influence us for the good or for the bad. Peer pressure isn't a teenager thing. It's a people thing. There's an old adage, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Your friends will influence, if not determine, the quality and the direction of your life. And so this is a principle that we have to leverage if we're going to be successful in life. But we also have to leverage it if we want to become more spiritually mature. If you want to grow as a follower of Christ, you need to walk with people who walk with you in the Lord. Think about it. For some of you, your great-grandparents, for me, my grandparents, they lived in a Christian culture. We don't. And if the only contact that you have with other Christians is here once a week, and the rest of your time you're immersed in a completely secularized post-Christian culture that is actually often hostile to your faith, then you are more or less trying to live your faith all alone and on your own. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And it wasn't what Christ intended. It's nice to belong to a great big church. And it's nice to be part of something significant. But it also is easy to get lost in the crowd. You need to be known and loved and supported. And without a Christ-centered friendship, our walk of faith will most certainly be slower and less steady, and we're more likely to fail and to fall. When we have friendships in which Christ is a central part, we connect with him in a way that is far less likely if we're doing it on our own. And that's because, yes, your faith is personal, but it's not private. We grow in faith relationally. We come together as a community on the weekend as a communal celebration, not for private prayer. There is time for private prayer that is needed, but this is a communal celebration, and we need friends in faith. And our strategy for helping you to develop friends in faith is small groups. We believe that is one of the basic steps in spiritual growth here at Ascension is getting into a small group. And a small group is just that. It's a small group of people. It can be anywhere from 8 to 12, and they meet on a regular basis, either once a week or twice a month. And small groups meet usually in one of the group members' homes, or they move it around. And there is time to gather and to catch up. And yes, there's time for prayer, but nobody has to pray out loud if they don't want to. And then the groups watch a video together. We provide discussion questions. The video's about 7 minutes. I'm looking at my director of small groups who's sitting back here. You can tell by their face whether you're getting it right or not. If they're going like this, you're like, I missed something. But the video goes into deeper depth as far as the series that we're in right now. Sundays, you sit there and you have to listen to me. In small groups, it's your chance to express yourself or not. You know, it helps to form connections, and those relationships are incredibly helpful to growing spiritually as a follower of Christ. But they also form bonds. They become your friends. They become your support group during difficult times. There's a single verse that we read from Paul's letter to the Thessalonians. I think it perfectly captures the essence of small groups and what we hope we will accomplish. Paul went on several trips to plant churches, and after a church was set up and running, he'd move on to the next city. But there were always problems back somewhere, or he's always sending letters back. And in a number of cases, those follow-up letters offered ongoing instruction and encouragement. And he wrote several letters, as I said, to that church in Thessalonica. And he encouraged them in the face of persecution that they were facing. He reminds them about their special relationship. He wrote, "With such affection for you, we were determined to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our very selves as well. So dearly beloved had you become to us." We all come at faith with different perspectives, different backgrounds, different experiences. My relationship with God is different from your relationship with God. All of us have some unique perspective that we can share. So whether you grew up in church and have taken your faith seriously for years, or if you're really just getting into it or getting back into it, trust me, you have something to offer to others about faith. And as you contribute your insights and ask your questions, others contribute theirs. Mutual growth can happen. We can influence one another into deeper relationships with Jesus. Small groups are not adult education. They're about life change. And that's what Paul's talking about. He says, we were determined to share with you our very lives as well. Small groups are an opportunity to share the wins and the losses, the troubles and the challenges that you experience in your life. When you share a joy with another, the joy is doubled. When you help carry someone else's heartache or hurt, you lighten their load. And besides their immediate value, small groups are kind of like insurance. You invest in them so that when you hit the storms of life, you have support, you have friendships that can help you to weather that storm. Through the years, I have heard story after story of people who have benefited from the support of their small group. So, to wrap up, if you're in a small group, I want to encourage you. I know it's not easy to do, especially at first. There are sometimes scheduling issues. There are sometimes personality issues. But some of our small group directors can always work with you to help you find another group, perhaps, that's a better fit. Some of you have been in small group and have kind of fallen away from that. Maybe it was because you had a bad experience. We know that happens from time to time, but maybe it's time to try again. More than anything, I'm just trying to plant the seeds up here today. I just want you to think about it and pray about it some more. And then, after Christmas, more likely after the first of the year, we will be offering another parish-wide small group launch. You can get into a group just in time for Lent, which is early this year, by the way. Lent is a perfect time to get started. In the gospel today, Jesus turns common wisdom on its head, and he counsels us, "The greatest among you must be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but whoever humbles himself will be exalted." In what ways are you serving others around you? In what ways are you acting with real humility and allowing others to serve you? The Lord's teaching us that's the very best way to live. And we believe that small groups are a great place to start.